What have you done, sweet champion of Ash? I only wanted to...
The story of Eygon and Irina is one that cannot exist outside of the historical context of Carim and the covenant that gave the land its reputation. There is little to no information about these two characters specifically, meaning that in order to develop their story, we must work backwards. In this video, I will do just that, first presenting a brief history of the Way of White and its influence on Carim, and then using that to piece together the story of this curious pair. The Way of White is a covenant that predominates in Dark Souls 1, as you, the player, have the ability to join it via Petrus of Thorolund. In Dark Souls 3, the covenant is mentioned and plays an important role in the lore, but is not joinable. And in DS2, it isn't even mentioned, implying that it never reached the distant lands of Drangleic. The history of this covenant is modeled with political tension and rivalry that I, for the sake of this video, will keep as brief as possible. Essentially, the Way of White was initially under the command of Allfather Lloyd, who was claiming his right to the title of Chief God on account of him being the uncle of Gwyn. But his militant reign came to an end when Gwyn's second-born son, Gwendolyn, emerged and claimed his right to the title, at which point Lloyd was cast from his position, and Gwendolyn claimed the title of Chief God and ruler of the Way of White. For unknown reasons, under Gwendolyn's control, Carim became the Covenant's new home. Whether this was due to some long-standing allegiance with the Covenant or Gwendolyn is unclear, but we do know that within Carim, the culture of the Covenant began to flourish, and over time, a tradition developed, the cultivation of Carim's maidens into firekeepers. Their mission became expansion, sending their firekeepers out to not only find bonfires to tend to, but also spread the word of the Covenant and its teachings. At some point, a strange knight from a distant land arrives in Carim, and is immediately taken by the culture and teachings of the Way of White. This knight, known as Morn, would forever change Carim when he introduced them to the goddess that he'd spent his life serving. Keitha, goddess of tears, is directly referenced in both the second and third Dark Souls game, although some believe she's also mentioned in Dark Souls 1, known then as Velka, goddess of sin. Her true nature is unclear, as some believe her to be a demon masquerading as a goddess, but for the sake of this video, I'll withhold my speculation. Over time, Morn rises within the ranks of the Covenant, as does his goddess, and even being accepted by Dark Sun Gwendolyn himself, the two begin to make up the very foundation of belief within the Covenant. So much so that the Way of White would build a cathedral in her honor, the Cathedral of the Deep. Statues of Keitha line the cathedral, a clear indication of their devotion to her. And her loyal knight, Morn, would also be held in high esteem, with his devotion to her becoming intrinsic to the culture of the Covenant. As I mentioned, the Way of White had not only been creating firekeepers, but also sending them out into the world, and thus into danger. And so, knights began to be appointed as defenders of these maidens, given a replica of Morn's armor to signify their loyalty. They were tasked with devoting their lives to their maiden as they traveled the lands on their mission, in the same way that Morn had devoted his life to Keitha. And this was surely seen as one of the highest honors that a knight of Carim could achieve, as the firekeepers were not only the backbone of the Covenant, but also Carim as a whole. And so enter the knight Eygon and the maiden Irina of Carim. On its surface, their story seems straightforward considering the background of the Way of White and Carim, but upon interacting with them, this simplicity begins to slip away. For Irina is not a firekeeper. She failed in her duty, and is now simply a blind maiden that Eygon has locked in a cell.
I am Irina of Carim. I came to this land so that I might be a firekeeper. Your touch has freed me from the darkness. You are a champion, then. I am weak and unfit to tend the flames. But if it would not trouble you, might I enter into your service instead?
And Eygon, although wearing Morn's armor, doesn't exactly seem to be filling the role of devotion that would be intended for him.
Taken an interest in her, have you? Well, she's a lost cause. Couldn't even become a firekeeper after I brought her all this way and got her all ready. She's beyond repair, I tell you.
But Eygon soon betrays his seeming distaste for the girl. As if you choose to rescue her from her cell, he says the following.
You've gone and rescued her, have you? How very quaint. Pitying creatures that are beyond help. Very well. I'm sick of looking after her at any rate. I am Eygon, a knight of Carim. I am allied to you for as long as you assure the girl's safety, and only for that long.
Based on his last statement about being your ally only so long as you protect Irina, it's pretty clear that his cruel words were only said to hide his true feelings towards the girl. It also becomes clear that Eygon is lying to us about his reason for traveling with her. He tells us that he brought her out here and prepared her to become a firekeeper just for her to fail. But that doesn't really add up. The firekeepers of Carim were sent into the world to use their gift, with a knight being sent with them to protect them. This much we know. But why would Carim send a failed firekeeper out traveling, with a clearly valuable knight by her side? Only the strongest of knights were given the honor of donning Morn's armor and protecting a firekeeper. So sending Eygon to protect a failed firekeeper seems like a waste of his talents, no? That is, unless Irina wasn't sent out to travel, and Eygon wasn't meant to be traveling with her. The description of Irina's ashes reads as follows. Irina was a frail woman. This frailty led her to becoming a saint of Carim, and to her grand treachery. Consider what we know about the land of Carim and its covenant. Their entire faith is based on the tending of the flame and the creation of firekeepers. Becoming one of these firekeepers is considered the greatest honor in their culture, and so we can assume that failing to do so could be seen as a treachery. If you've watched my previous video about the lore of firekeepers, then you'll have an understanding of what kind of torture this role actually entails. Irina, being so frail, likely wasn't physically capable of completing the process, and living in a place run by religious fanatics was labeled a traitor because of it. The cruel irony of her situation is that she was able to get far enough in the process to lose her sight and experience the maddening writhing of humanity beneath her skin, but not far enough to actually tend to a bonfire. While we don't know what kind of punishment she was due on account of her failure, we do know that she never had to face it, thanks to Eygon, her brave knight. Eygon would have known well what awaited a failed firekeeper, and for whatever reason, couldn't bear to see Irina endure it. After all,
even a broken woman deserves a dignity.
He steals her away, knowing that doing so will place both his knighthood and his life in jeopardy, as Carim places as great a value on honor as it does faith. But in order to understand how something like this could be possible, we need to get an understanding of what's going on in Carim at the time that Dark Souls 3 takes place. So, up until this point, the role of Chief God has fallen to Dark Sun Gwendolyn, who, as I stated earlier, has a blood right to the position. However, as the fire begins to fade and the old lords are resurrected from their graves, we know that Aldrich makes his move, devouring Gwendolyn. We see Gwendolyn's likeness in-game, but this isn't the real Son of Gwen. Rather, it's Aldrich the Devourer wearing his flesh. And while Aldrich would have been inclined to keep this a secret, to allow him to fill the role of Chief God, word begins to spread. Pontiff Sullivan, hearing of this, takes it as an opportunity to join the power struggle and claim his right to the crown. And so the Way of White is split, with Gwendolyn's most devout refusing to believe that he's really gone. And on the other hand, a portion of the Covenant refuses to follow a mere husk of their once powerful leader, turning instead to Pontiff Sullivan in Irithyll. This unrest would undoubtedly have thrown the Covenant, and by proxy Carim, into disarray, making it an opportune time to, say, steal away a doomed maiden. And so, Eygon takes Irina, perhaps telling her that he knows of a place where she can have a second shot at becoming a firekeeper. They set out together, and it's not entirely clear if Eygon actually has any kind of plan for her, at least until you arrive. If you rescue her from the cell, there are two possible outcomes to her questline, which can pretty much be summed up as a good and bad ending. Once in your service, Irina will ask you to find Braille divine tomes, and in return, she'll act as a vendor of miracles. And herein lies our choice. If we give her the Londor or Deep Braille Divine Tomes, she will start selling dark miracles. And if you buy them from her...
Sweet champion, leaving so soon? Please, come back in good time. I am frightened of the dark that gnaws away at me.
The darkness begins to take a toll on her, and if you choose this path, Eygon will take her back from you, realizing that you mean to do his maiden harm. When you encounter them again near Udex Gundir's bonfire, Eygon will be hostile. Defeating him and sending Irina back to Firelink essentially seals her fate, and she'll beg for, but can no longer feel, your touch.
Oh, someone, please touch me. The dark surrounds me, nibbles at my flesh. Little creatures, they never stop biting. So please, hold out your hand and touch me.
That is, unless you equip Morn's gauntlets.
Oh, you again. Touch me one last time and kill me, as you promised you would.
This raises two questions. The first being, why would Eygon make this kind of promise to her? And the second being, what was the criteria for him having to make good on it? As I said earlier, I think it's possible that he convinced her to flee with him by telling her that he knew of another way for her to become a firekeeper. We know that she was a nun while living in Carim, and being so devout, was likely ready to accept her punishment. But hearing that she could have another chance by leaving with Eygon, she agrees on one condition. Should she fail again, he must be the one to kill her, delivering her the ultimate punishment. This would have been no small decision for her. By running from her divinely ordered punishment, she would have been betraying not only her homeland, but also her faith. And so, Eygon promises that if she fails, he will be the one to deliver the punishment, damning them both for their defection. But, like I said, Irina's questline has two possible endings. So what happens if you pursue the good ending? If you purchase all of her holy miracles without buying any of the dark miracles that she sells, she will achieve her goal and become a firekeeper. When this happens, she'll move to the tower outside of Firelink that's lined with the corpses of past firekeepers. And as for Eygon, he leaves Firelink, travels back to the cell he held Irina in, and kills himself. Meaning that while Irina has the possibility for a good ending, he doesn't. He is doomed no matter what happens to his maiden, the only difference being whether his demise comes at our hand or his own. But why do this? One would think that he'd be overjoyed to see Irina finally achieve her goal. Well, he has a line that he'll say if he succeeds in killing you that, while seemingly innocuous, gives us our answer.
Remember, a knight of Carim does not forgive betrayal. Not ever.
A knight of Carim is defined only by his honor, and to forgo one's honor for any reason is a sin worthy of death. Eygon knows this from the moment he considers taking Irina away, and yet he damns himself anyway. He lies to her to get her to come with him and leaves his home, knowing that he can never return. He protects Irina with his life because at this point, she's all he really has left. He knows that he can never truly have her though, as her desire is not for him, but for her faith. But this doesn't stop him. They travel aimlessly as he assures her that he knows exactly where they're going, until one day they're approached by a chosen undead, setting into motion the beginning of Irina's new life, and the ending of Eygon's.
Irina. This bastard. Irina.
And that's the story of Irina and Eygon of Carim. But I do have a couple of things I want to clear up and address. The first being the question of why Eygon has Irina locked in a cell when we find them. And I don't really think that the answer to this is Eygon was malicious towards her in any way. Well, he's pretty shitty when he talks about her. I don't think he's actually a bad guy towards her. I think it's most likely that they've been out traveling, they need to rest, maybe Eygon has to go find food, and the safest place for Irina is locked in a cell. But I think the more likely reason for this is honestly probably just gameplay. Miyazaki loves giving us a locked door and making us find a random key to open it. And the second thing I want to address is Lautrec of Carim in Dark Souls 1. It's very interesting that Lautrec is also traveling with the Firekeeper, and his and Eygon's stories seem to mirror each other, and I mean that literally, like they are the exact opposite of each other, because when you talk to Lautrec, the way he talks about his Firekeeper, it's definitely more like she is his servant. But speculating on the exact reason for this is something that I want to save for either a Lautrec specific episode or the Covenant episode about the Way of White. And then the third and final thing I want to address is Eygon's shield. So we know that Eygon's shield is engraved with the likeness of his sister's face. Now, who this sister is, I have no idea. Now, I've seen some people say that his sister is actually Irina, and that's the reason that he took her, but I don't really like that. I just feel like maybe it would be a little more explicit if she was actually meant to be this sister. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about any of this, really. So please feel free to leave a comment or join my Discord via the link in my description. And that is all I really have for you guys tonight. So, as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, don't go hollow.